So this is Counter-Strike Global Offensive, otherwise known as CSGO. So CSGO is a first-person shooter in which the players can join either a terrorist team or the counter-terrorist team, or become a spectator. Each team tries to complete their mission or objective to eliminate the opposing team. So in each round they spawn simultaneously, and from there they try and complete the objective. The gameplay itself has evolved quite far in the Counter-Strike series. The Counter-Strike series began in a Half-Life modification, and since then there hasn't been really any storyline evolved from that. So it's basically stayed as a competitive online game. So instead of having the storyline, they kind of make up for their gameplay in the team-based aspects of the game. So when a person first starts playing Counter-Strike, Counter-Strike does offer an offline multiplayer mode. In this mode, you can play against AI, where you can set the difficulty themselves. From here, new players can pick up basics of the game and basic objectives and strategizing. So also in collaboration with the Offline with Bots, they had this training thing called weapons training. So what you can do here is this is Valve's way of teaching new players how to aim with a gun and use the controls, and I think it's a really good idea. So in terms of gameplay functionality, the game's physics work really well. There's almost no lag or no glitching when moving around in the game, and this is mostly contributed to Valve's dedication in making the series such a successful FPS. So since 2003, when Valve picked up the series, the team has released CS 1.6, CS Source, and the latest installment, CSGO. So the game itself is simple yet condensed in terms of gameplay, so I really think this is the reason why it's become so successful. With this being said, I do believe there are some issues with the gameplay. So I'm playing Counter-Strike Global Offensive again. I've become to realize that the game is actually very elitist. It's got a very elitist community, it's got a really elitist feel about it. If you aren't good at the game to begin with, or good at FPSs in general, it's really honestly not going to be fun. So even though Valve does offer the offline with bots and the weapon training, I think that going online into competitive play is completely different to playing offline. I mean, they do offer these things in order to make players better, but nothing's really going to compare them to the complete elitist community that is the online community of Counter-Strike. And I think this is what forces a lot of people out of the game. I noticed while playing the game, I mean I've been playing the game for many years, but I've noticed while playing recently that a lot of people, when there's maybe a new player on their team, are maybe a little hostile towards them, so they don't give them enough time to maybe learn the game, and maybe give them a little leeway if they die a lot of times during the game. And I know this is what makes new people frustrated with the game. I've played many FPSs before, Counter-Strike especially when I first started, that was really bad, and it was really hard to keep going on with the game when in every game I get told that I'm a noob or I'm really bad at the game. And this is really what's crushing the online aspect of the game, and ultimately hurting Counter-Strike as a gaming series. So with the gameplay being simple itself, it leaves a lot of the game to skill. So taking out things such as aiming down the sights like you have in Call of Duty, there's no perks such as steady aim, which makes aiming easier when you're in the sight. Other things like sprinting, all these kind of things have been taken out of the game to leave a lot of it to skill. So it's interesting to watch when this actually comes to gameplay. So in taking a lot of these materialistic things out of the game, like sprinting and stuff, to better your opponent, you can't just change your camouflage or change your perks or change your weapon in order to beat them. You actually really honestly need to change your play style. So each game is different. Each game you can't play the same as the game before to win. So when you match up against an opponent that's maybe a little bit better than you, you have to change the way you think or the way you work the map or the way you play the game in order to beat them. So there's no customization that you can really do that's going to put you ahead. So you can't just cheap a kill by, say, putting on a rocket launcher and running down the middle of the map and just blowing them up. There's none of that. It's purely based on skill. So if you're not going to be able to maybe adapt the way you play as an FPS player, this game isn't going to be fun. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about the game modes in Counter-Strike Go. So there's a few game modes, and I'll just open up the bot menu. So we have Team Deathmatch, Arms Race, Demolition, Classic Casual, Classic Competitive. So I'm just going to run through the difference between them really quickly and what's good and bad about them. So deathmatch is just kind of your standard deathmatch that you see in every FPS game. But the little thing that's different between this and other FPS games is Counter-Strike Go, you actually run off points as well as kills. So you'll get more points, say, for using a random gun that pops up. It'll give you a queue to say if you use this gun you'll get 6 extra points for your team, etc. So that's the good thing I think that differs this deathmatch from other deathmatches. So Arms Race is an interesting game type. This one differs from a lot of FPSs. So in this game type you'll start with an SMG and you'll work your way up. Each kill you get a new gun, and you've got to work your way up through all the guns until you reach a knife, and once you get a knife and you get a kill with a knife, your team wins. This game type is probably the most free-for-all game type in the game, even though they're all team based. This one is more person to person based than it is team based, so you'll only win if one person gets the knife. So in saying that, I think Arms Race becomes the most casual game type in the game. You can play this without playing as a team. Demolition is my favourite game type in the game. So Demolition is kind of like your search and destroy. There's a terrorist team and a counter-terrorist team, like there always is, and the terrorist team is trying to plant a bomb. And yeah, if the bomb explodes, the terrorists win. If the counter-terrorists defuse it, they win. This is one that involves the most coordination with the team, and I think it's the most competitive game type. It's really good. Now, classic casual and classic competitive are two game types kind of similar. Competitive is a competitive version, casual is just a casual version. So they involve two game types. It's Demolition, I've already talked about, and Hostage. With Hostage is kind of like the opposite to Demolition. So the terrorist has taken someone hostage and the counter-terrorists are trying to get them back. If the terrorists succeed in taking the hostage and kill all the counter-terrorists, they win. Counter-terrorists bring the hostage back to their safe point, they win. And these game types are what they use in the tournaments and stuff. They're really good game types for competitive nature and working together as a team. So the design and style of the game. First off, the design. It's the game's the levels in the game. I'll talk about the maps in particular. The maps are really balanced. So there's two sides of the map where the counter-terrorists will spawn and the terrorists will spawn. They spawn on opposite sides of the map. And the way they've worked it is so that Valve can keep the games really consistently even. So there's no advantage for being on one side of the map compared to the other. And they've really worked on this from 1.6 all the way through to Counter-Strike Go. So I can use Dust 2 as an example. So Dust was an original map from 1.6, and there's just like a few things they've changed on it. So the map used to be one-sided, and there used to be an advantage for the counter-terrorists. And what they did, they slightly altered the map, made a few new ways to get around the map, heightened a few things we could snipe through and stuff, just to make the game a little more even. And I think this is a really good design aspect that Counter-Strike Go has. In terms of style, I think that the game's still fairly elitist. It's elitist skill-based FPS. That's the style of game that it has. And yeah, it's really different. It gives a more competitive side to the gaming compared to casual FPS games such as Call of Duty or Halo or something. In terms of graphics, so the graphics in Counter-Strike Go are a complete step up from graphics in 1.6 and Source. So in Go, they've made the graphics really realistic. Things actually look like they look like in real life, and it's really keeping up with the modern games of today. Moving on to sound now. So the sounds in the game, I'm not going to touch on too much because there's not too much about them. I mean, they're not that fancy, but things do sound like what they're supposed to sound like. I mean, the sniper rifles in particular sound like they're supposed to sound like. The grenades sound like they're supposed to sound like. But the game isn't really focused on sounds and graphics and that. It's more focused on the gameplay itself. So in terms of an award system, Counter-Strike Go does have an awards tab. So in the awards tab, it's got a few things. There's stats, achievements, and leaderboards. And I think this tab's actually pretty good. I mean, the game's a really competitive game, so to give a stat menu like this one here that shows how many rounds you've played, how many you've won, your win-loss ratio, shots fired, and all that stuff is kind of good for players that are really competitive. Shows a player's skill almost in a bunch of stats. There's also in here, there's achievements. So in the achievements, there's just like your standards achievements you have in most games. So kill an enemy, 200 enemies with a Desert Eagle, and so on and so forth. These kind of things you see in a lot of games, but you know, it's never goes stale. It's the kind of stuff that players like to play the game for. I mean, if a game doesn't have a progression system, what's the point of playing it, really? And then the leaderboard, they have the online leaderboard where you can compare yourself against your friends and against the world, and I think that just really just creates a competitive spirit. So that's my review on Counter-Strike Global Offense. I apologize this review carried on so long, but it is hard to talk so little about a game that is loved so much. Thank you for watching.
Stop acting lazy. She Instagram herself like bad bitch alert. He Instagram his watch like mad rich alert. He only wanna see that ass in reverse. $2,000 bag with no cash in your purse.